JDs and Lettleman, welcome back to the Double E podcast. A long-awaited return, the first episode of hopefully many in 2026. But the reason why we're making today's episode is for a very, very important topic. The NHL playoffs start Friday, the 18th of April, I believe. And so we'll be going through the bracket challenge. And as you know, predicting a bracket challenge in any sport is very difficult, but this one is probably the second hardest behind the March Madness bracket because of how unpredictable the Stanley Cup Finals can be. So hopefully today I'll be giving you all the analysis of all the brackets, or not all brackets, all the teams, their players, and the breakdown of each series, and giving you my personal bracket, as well as our editor Ryan's personal bracket at the end to see who we think will win the finals, and hopefully give you your best chance of winning $1 million in the NHL bracket challenge. So without further ado, let's dive into our first series, going into the first place team in the NHL with the most points in the President's Trophy winner, the Colorado Avalanche versus the LA Kings. This will be your first Western Conference matchup between the two teams. As I said earlier, that the Colorado Avalanche have won the President's Trophy, and the President's Trophy is awarded every year to the team with the most points in the standings. So that would be your number one team in the entire league gets awarded the President's Trophy. The pros of winning the President's Trophy is obviously, you get some hardware for your club, but you also get home ice advantage for the entirety of the playoffs. However, since 2012, 0 teams have actually won the Stanley Cup while hosting the President's Trophy in the same season. So really, winning the President's Trophy isn't that good. Although, yes, you are good, it's really not that good. Especially when you consider the playoffs, you completely flip the script and everybody's back to 0. So if you had a 150-point season, just like Connor McDavid did, you're back to 0. Everybody starts at the same, no matter what or how good you are. So, diving into the series, obviously, they are the best team in the league. And looking at just some stats here, they have about 3.7 goals per game, which is elite. They only let up about 2.5 goals per game, so they score about 1.2 more than they let up, which is just a really good stat there because that means obviously you're scoring more than you're letting in, which means they have elite goaltending in the back, which they did win the Jennings Trophy, which is awarded to the best goaltending pair in the league, and Mackenzie Blackwood and Scott Wedgwood, being the goaltenders for Colorado, took that home this year. So obviously we know that the goaltending depth is elite in Colorado, and their goaltending, their goal scoring capabilities. You got Cale Makar on the blue line, Nathan McKinnon on the front lines, who scored 127 points this year, coming in, I believe, 3rd for the Art Ross race. But he also did win the Mauricio Rocket Richard Trophy for the most goals scored by one person in the regular season. So he is extremely hot when it comes to putting the puck in the back of the net. So he will be the number one player for Colorado, but this absolutely stud-loaded Colorado team with Martin Necas, Nazem Kadri, Nathan McKinnon, it's just going to be impossible to stop, especially when you consider the fact that they have one of the best blue line pairs in Devon Taves and Cale Makar, which both players represented Team Canada's number 1 line in the Olympics this last few months. But kind of putting that aside, with all the star-loaded talent, with one of the best defensemen in the world and one of the best forwards in the world, they have one of the worst power plays in the league at a whopping only 17%, putting them second to last, if not third to last, in the league. But, however, they make up that deficit with obviously having one of the best penalty kills in the league at 84.5%, obviously due to their elite pairings with Devon Taves and Cale Makar leading the way. Now, kind of putting the glaze of Colorado aside here, if we dive into the Los Angeles Kings, which just barely made it into the playoffs at the Wildcard 2 team with only 90 points in the standings. Mind you, 90 points in the standings if we move to the Eastern Conference wouldn't have even put you close to a playoff spot. The Pacific Division has been historically bad this year, so the fact that LA even made it is a blessing for the entire city of Los Angeles. But when we look at their just numbers, they only score about 2.8 goals per game, and they let up 3 goals a game. So obviously they're at a -2 when it comes to goals for and goals against. That is not very good. Their power play is also terrible. It's even worse in Colorado somehow at a 17.1. And their penalty kill is pretty solid. It's a 74.7, but it's obviously not very good when you consider how bad their power play is. So just kind of looking at the series, what each team will need to take over to win. Looking at Colorado, they just got to play like they've been playing the last 82 games. They got them number one in the league for a reason, so if they keep that up, they're just going to win the series no matter what. So they just got to keep doing what they're doing. As for Los Angeles, I think the biggest thing is you need help from two main people. Darcy Kemper, your starting goaltender, and then Quinton Byfield, your number one forward. But other than that, I mean, you don't get, I'm talking like generational runs, like best playoff performance of your life from both players. I just realistically, and I think everybody doesn't see Los Angeles really doing anything. It's a really, really bad matchup for Los Angeles when it comes to Colorado Avalanche. I just don't really see them moving any further than maybe like 1 win or 2 wins in the series at most. The only thing that might boost them motivation-wise is the possibility of, this is Anze Kopitar's last season, so they want him to go out on a high note. But the numbers don't match. I mean, this is just, I think, a really one-sided series. So I got Colorado moving on in the first round of our little bracket challenge here. So Colorado will take it in round 2. And I believe they will do this in probably 5 games. I don't think it's going to be a sweep because there's always going to be that one game, but I definitely don't see LA winning more than 1 or 2. So I got Colorado taking LA down in 5 games. Now, moving on in the Western Conference here, we have the Dallas Stars versus the Minnesota Wild, and that is going to be probably the best series we see in the entire playoffs. Maybe the Stanley Cup will be better, but this is going to be the number 1 series by far because of how close these two teams are. Now, if you look at the standings, you'll see that Dallas Stars had 112 points, Minnesota had 104, so there's a little bit of a gap. That's about 4 more wins for Dallas. But these two teams have known that they've been wanting to play each other for the last few months because Colorado is obviously number 1 in their division and number 1 in the league, so no one's going to pass them. So these two teams have just hated each other when it comes to matchups with them. I mean, the last matchup, you should have brought police officers on the ice too because they just went at each other's throats. I mean, it was about winning hockey. They just wanted to beat each other up beyond, beyond saving. It was a bloody matchup, but a really good one. These two teams are extremely close, splitting a season series at 4 games, tied 2-2. So it's extremely hard to predict this matchup. And when you look at their numbers, I mean, the goals per game, the Dallas Stars are 3.4. Minnesota Wild is 3.3. I mean, it's a 0.1 margin. That's basically nothing in the greater scheme of things. Then you look at goals against per game. I mean, Dallas at 2.8 and then Minnesota at 2.9. It's, again, extremely close. I mean, that's just not enough. Their power plays are both pretty good when all considered, especially when you got Wyatt Johnson and Quinn Hughes. But 28.6, 25.2 in favor of Dallas. I mean, that is just extremely close again. That's only a matter if they scored 1 or 2 more power play goals than Minnesota did the entire 82-game season. And then their penalty kill is both 80%. So every number lines up perfectly, with margins being only about 0.1 away from each other. So predicting this matchup is extremely difficult. And then it's like, okay, well, let's compare the players. You got 2 of the best defensemen in the world, 1 on each team. You have some of the best forwards in the game. I mean, Minnesota, you got Marco Rossi, Kirill Kaprizov, Joel X playing excellent right now. You got the Foligno brothers, which are going to be grinders. Not goal scorers, but grinders, which is really big in the playoffs, especially when you consider every game matters. Jason Robertson, Mikko Rantanen, Miro Heiskanen, one of the best defensemen in the world. Wyatt Johnson, one of the best power play forwards in the world. Just an absolutely loaded roster on all fronts. Tyler Seguin leading the way, and then you have, Nick Foligno, I believe, is the captain for Minnesota leading the way. Just an absolutely close matchup. This is as close as it gets. I don't think I've ever seen a playoff series in any sport this close. So just before I give the winner, this is definitely going to go 7 games. There's no way this is not going to go 7 games, in my opinion, unless we see a major injury. But the one thing that's going to push a team over the edge is going to be goaltending. So out of the 2 teams, which goaltender is going to be better? I think it's got to be Jake Ottinger for the Dallas Stars, especially considering he just won the Olympic gold with Team USA. He knows, and he's been on a team that knows what it takes to win. Win it all, especially when it comes on best on best. Playoffs is best on best. It's the best teams in the leagues with the best players all going at it. So I think goaltending is going to be the little edge. And Jake Ottinger is a playoff performer. We've seen it before, and I think we're going to see it again here. Even with the Quinn Hughes trade for Minnesota, I just don't think it's enough. Again, just a bad matchup, but I mean, this is going to be such a great game. It's a great game, and I'm very excited to see it. But I have Dallas winning this just solely off of goaltending, not even goal scoring, just solely off of goaltending. I have Dallas taking this series in 7 games. Now, moving on to our third matchup in the West, we shift over to the poverty division, aka the Pacific Division, and I'll be going into why it's poverty here in a second as I'm writing on the whiteboard. But basically, you have the Vegas Golden Knights versus the Utah Mammoth. This is the first time Utah has made it to the playoffs since transferring from Arizona, so this will be very fun if you are a Utah Mammoth fan, all considered. But I mean, the Vegas Golden Knights are obviously number 1 team in the Pacific somehow. Again, the Pacific is the poverty division this year, as any team in the Pacific would have not even made a wild card playoff spot in the East. Just terrible. I mean, the worst division in hockey. It's probably the worst division I've ever seen. There was several nights where every single team in the Pacific just lost. Never won, just all 8 teams that lost, which is just embarrassing. Especially when you consider the fact that, these are supposedly top teams on the entire Pacific coastline. No, it's just really bad representation of the Pacific. So I don't really have a lot of those teams going very far. So just diving into this matchup, obviously Utah is coming in at the wild card. I believe it's wild card 2. Wild card 1. So a little bit better than actually they were a lot better in Los Angeles. I'm not going to lie to you. But the Vegas Golden Knights are obviously, a team you don't want to mess with, considering they won the Stanley Cup just 3 years ago. But the big thing with Vegas that's changed since then is obviously the additions of Mitch Marner, which is an elite forward, which is going to be a huge difference in this series. But also the fact that they fired their head coach with only 8 games remaining in the season. So they're going to be a little bit wet around the ears when it comes to coaching, especially when they just fired their coach that won them the Stanley Cup. Don't really know what he got fired for, and it's not really been released why either. So yeah, I don't know what you think about that one. But just kind of diving into their stats real briefly, the Utah Mammoth and Golden Knights actually share the same amount of goals per game at 3.3 apiece. And they share the exact same goals against per game at 3. Although Vegas' power play is a bit better due to offensive weapons like Mark Stone, Thomas Hertl, Jack Eichel, and Mitch Marner at 25%, whereas Utah's is only 20%. Then we go to the penalty kill, and the Vegas Golden Knights have a significantly better penalty kill at 81 compared to Utah's 78. But the big difference maker, obviously, here is we had a huge year from Dylan Guenther, who just had an amazing 40-goal season coming into, I believe, his only 3rd season in the league. So he's going to be an absolute stud in this series. Clayton Keller, probably one of the most underrated forwards in the entire Western Conference this year, with an 86 points per game. 86 points, which is over a point per game. He's just been playing some of the best hockey since coming back from the Olympics that we've seen from him. But even with all of this loaded talent in a Logan Cooley, in a Dylan Guenther, in a Clayton Keller, I just think that you can't beat the Vegas Golden Knights offense. You're going to have to either get some elite defense from Mikhail Sergachev or John Marina, or get some goaltending from Vera Blekma if you are the Utah Mammoth. Because you're not outscoring Jack Eichel, Mitch Marner, Thomas Hertl, Ivan Barbashev. You're just not outscoring those guys. These guys are 20 to 30 goal scorers in a given season. Mitch Marner doesn't score a ton of goals, but he is a playmaker. He is almost inside of every single goal-scoring play, especially in the power play. So Utah's going to have to figure out a way to shut him down, but also make sure you don't let Jack Eichel get up ahead of it. Because Jack Eichel, too, we've known, is a absolute stud. since moving over to the Vegas Golden Knights from Buffalo. Having 90 points this season, you're going to have to figure out how to stop playoff Eichel. And I don't see Utah shutting down. They're too young of a team. They're coming up. The average age is around 23, I believe. So I just don't think, there's enough playoff experience to get them past a only 3 years ago Stanley Cup champion, considering their roster hasn't moved much since, and the moves that they have made have only made the team better. So realistically, I just don't see Utah winning this unless they can somehow beat them by goaltending. And the goaltending for the Vegas Golden Knights is atrocious. They've had one of the worst goaltending performances we've seen. Not worse than the next year's we'll get into, but it's definitely a factor when you consider, the playoffs. So going into this, I just think, Vegas is going to outscore Utah, even with the goaltenders being significantly better in Utah's favor. I just don't see them getting past A, Vegas' blue line, and B, them outscoring Vegas on a given night, unless their goaltenders just absolutely poop the bed or something, or get hurt. I don't see it happening. So without that saying, I think it'll be a closer series. I don't think it's going to go to 7, but I also don't think it's going to go to 5. So I'll settle at 6 games here for the Vegas Golden Knights moving on to round 2, and Utah Mammoth, sadly, because they're such a fun team, being eliminated. But yeah, I definitely do think, in the future, Utah will definitely be a team to reckon with. I just don't think they have, A, the playoff experience, and B, the age yet to beat anybody. And that dives us into our last first-round series in the Pacific, 2 versus 3. Yeah, they suck. I'm going to be real. I'm not even going to go into their points. They both suck. But the goals for per game, you obviously, if you're the Edmonton Oilers, you have Connor McJesus on your team who scored a whopping 134 points this year. Just unfathomable numbers. And then you also have Leon Draisaitl. The number 1 German player in the history of Germany. And he's actually one of the most underrated goal scorers, as I believe he had 50 goals this year before he ended up getting hurt at the end of the year. So that's just remarkable. 50 goals in 82 games. I'll let you just sit and think about how immaculate that is. But he is definitely one of the best goal scoring talents in the game. And obviously Connor McJesus is the best player in the game, period. So when you have those two on the ice at the same time, it's just impossible to stop. Especially when you got Evan Bouchard, which is the Cale Makar equivalent to the Edmonton Oilers, who can send a Bouch bomb 98 miles an hour at your goaltender and make some beautiful plays on the blue line, quarterbacking one of the best power plays in the league. But when we look at the goals for per game, obviously the Oilers have a significant edge, being one of the best in the entire postseason at 3.5. And their goals against per game is a 3.3. But their power play is a whopping 30%, number 1 in the league because of the big 3. And then you also have Zach Hyman, which is just the tip and merchant right in front of the net. You cannot, if you got to stop Zach Hyman, if you can't stop Zach Hyman, you're just getting every rebound off your goaltender's going in the back of your net, no matter what. He's a tip and merchant for a reason, because he scores every single time that puck comes close to him in front of the net. Their penalty kill isn't great at 77%. But that's because this team is solely based on we're going to outscore you on any given night, no matter how good or how bad our goaltending defense is. And that's been their motto and their way of life for the last couple of years. It obviously hasn't worked out as they've lost in back-to-back Stanley Cup finals in the last 2 years. But, on a given night, if you're going in expecting to outscore this team, you might as well just give it up. You're not doing that. Now, if we dive into the Anaheim Ducks a little bit, they are having a absolutely just unprecedented season with the average age of the Ducks being around 24 years old. They're averaging about 3.3 goals a game, with this number looks very bad at 3.6 goals against per game, but that's because of they would win 6-1 one night and then other nights get blown out 5-0. So although they have one of the worst goals against per game, it's not as much the goaltender's fault as it is the team's fault around them. So then we go to the power play, and their power play is not very good. And a lot of that's because they don't have a great quarterback on the blue line. And, their best quarterback, or defenseman, I should probably say, is Jackson LaCombe or Owen Zellweger. But they're both extremely young. They're both only in their 20s. They have not had more than one NHL season combined. Not combined, between the both of them. So, they don't have enough playoff experience. NHL experience, never left playoff experience. But we'll see here. Obviously, like I said, the postseason completely resets and flips the script. So who knows? Maybe Anaheim will turn it around here in the postseason, especially on a terrible goaltending and terrible and not a great penalty kill in Anaheim. In Edmonton Oilers. But just kind of diving into the series, what's going to be the difference maker, and I think the big thing for Edmonton is you got to find goaltending. They have easily the worst goaltending problem in the league. They don't even have a starting goaltender when you look at the stats. Tristan Jarry, a goaltender they traded for from your Pittsburgh Penguins, just has not performed anywhere near he was in the regular season with Pittsburgh, and has just kind of fallen off this game, being probably the most inconsistent starter in the entire league this entire season. And then Calvin Pickard's behind him, but he's not very good either. He played excellent in the last year's postseason, picking up where Stuart Skinner left off, but he's not a starter. He lets up about 4 goals a night. And granted, the Oilers will outscore you, but when you're letting in 4 to 5 goals a night, that's not sustainable. Especially when you play the same team at most 7 times. You're going to adapt every single game, especially when it comes to games 3 and 4, after you've seen the team so much. You're just not going to be able to outscore them every single night, because what usually works against them once or twice in a regular season will not work 4 or 5 times, because they're just naturally going to adapt as the game goes on and the series goes further. But seeing this, I just think the Anaheim Ducks have such an amazing season. This team is extremely fast, probably one of the only teams that can keep up with the Edmonton Oilers' pace. And I just think, there's a lot of unchecked talent that we are yet to see from Anaheim coming here, especially with their young talent. Although the Edmonton Oilers have made it to back-to-back Stanley Cup finals, I think they get bounced in the first round by the Anaheim Ducks solely based off of goaltending alone. That goaltending problems is not been fixed. Their blue line, which is their defense, isn't great either. So I just realistically, as the series goes on, they'll probably win the first 2 games, but the Ducks are going to adapt come 4 or 5 games into the series. And once they adapt, they have some of the best defensemen in the world, one of them being on the Team USA Olympic gold in the Jackson LaCombe. If Jackson LaCombe plays like he did or should have been playing at the Olympics, it's going to be impossible for people like Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Evan Bouchard, and Zach Hyman to score. And they don't have a lot of secondary scoring either in the Edmonton Oilers. So if you shut down their starting 5, you're going to shut down almost their entire offense. And seeing that, especially when the Ducks have one of the more depth-loaded lineups on the forwards, I just think Anaheim takes this solely off of depth, goaltending, and defense. Which sounds like a lot, but it's so close. It's so extremely close. But I don't really see the Oilers winning this. I really don't. Which is kind of crazy, like I said, considering, they went to back-to-back Stanley Cup finals. Granted, they lost both, but we're getting there, You got to win at least 12 games to get there. So, yeah. Oh, I marked out the wrong team. But, I have the Anaheim Ducks moving on to the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs here. So, before we dive into the East, I'm just going to finish off the entire Western Conference. Diving into round 2, we'll just kind of restart. We'll dive back into our Colorado Avalanche versus Dallas Stars. Kind of explaining these teams won't take too long, as I've kind of already said a lot of what you're looking for between these 2 teams. The only things we'll really be going into at the round 2 is kind of like, what do I think is going to have to happen to win the series for each team. So going into it, the season matchup was extremely close between the 2. I believe Colorado beat them 3 times. If not, they only beat them twice, which would split the series at 2, considering they're the same division. But this series, again, is just extremely close, solely because of the power plays and the goal scoring talent on both sides. But the big thing, and I think this will be the series deciding factors. I obviously said, the goaltending duo in Colorado won the Jennings Trophy, which is the best goaltending duo in the league. But they have really struggled since, and I struggle, they're not playing like the best 2 goaltenders in NHL history. They're kind of showing a lot of humanness when it comes to being in net. They're not freaks, unnatural, made in the lab like they were before the Winter Olympics break, but now they're kind of settling down a little bit, in a bad way if you're Colorado. But seeing this, I just think goaltending. if you're going to be in a close series, the number one thing that's going to steal the series is going to be your goaltending. Honorable mention is secondary scoring, but it's going to be goaltending 9 times out of 10. And Jay Ottinger is one of the best, if not the best, goaltender in the league. I think he deserves a Benza Trophy, which is awarded to the number one goaltender in the league. And I think he's extremely underrated. He hasn't performed as of recent in the playoffs, but when you consider Dallas's blue line has been hurt every single year for the last 30 years, I don't really put that against him. And when you look at the facts that, this guy is a menace. I mean, he's won an Olympic gold. He has some of the best stats in the entire league. He has some of the most starts just behind Connor Hellebuyck, Ilya Sorokin, or Andrei Vasilevsky. But this guy is a franchise goaltender. And I think in a franchise goaltender, you got to win big games. And this guy is capable of winning big games. And seeing that, I think, Dallas is going to have the edge goaltending-wise. And their power play is significantly better. It's a whopping, I'm looking at it here, 11% better, which is just, they scored at least double the amount of goals that Colorado scored all year. So knowing that, I think, you cannot give this team A, not a man advantage, and B, you cannot let this goaltender get hot. So you got to have Nathan McKinnon, Martin Necas, Nazem Kadri, Artemi Lehkonen, everybody on Colorado lighting this man up. I'm talking 30, 40 shots a game. If you're not getting at least 30, 40 shots a game, you're not breaking this guy. You're just not, because you're not going to have as many opportunities. So for Colorado, you need some big goaltending. Dallas, to beat the Colorado Avalanche, they just got to play the way they've been playing. You need a big series from your big players like Miro Heiskanen shutting down Nathan McKinnon. You need big goals from Jason Robertson, your number one forward. You need big power play moments. You got to capitalize on power play every single time. If you're Wyatt Johnson, the number one power play goal scorer of the league this year, you got to keep that up. You got to keep scoring. So the big thing too is Mikko Rantanen, who was a Colorado Avalanche player for about 8 to 9 years, is making his rematch again against with the Dallas Stars. He's returning to Colorado to play them again. And last year, he probably had one of the most memorable playoff moments of all time as he was traded from Colorado last year. He scored a hat trick, series-deciding 3 goals against his former team in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup playoffs in the first round. He single-handedly eliminated his old team in Game 7. Knowing that this guy plays with just a freak amount of talent against his former club, I think he's going to be the X factor along with Jake Ottinger to give them the edge over the President's Trophy winner, the Colorado Avalanche. So I have the Dallas Stars moving on to the conference finals, beating the President's Trophy winner, Colorado Avalanche. Now, how many games? Usually you don't really have to predict games if you're doing any bracket challenge for the second rounds are on, but honestly, I think, last year the series went to 7 games. I don't think this is going to be any different. Colorado's only gotten better, same with Dallas, so if you want games, I'm going to estimate probably 7 games from those 2 teams in round 2. Which leads us to our last second round matchup in the West. We got the Vegas Golden Knights versus Anaheim Ducks. The big thing here is obviously goaltending, as I said previously. Although the numbers don't suggest that the Anaheim Ducks have great goaltending, Lucas Stahl was an Olympic goaltender for a reason. So I think, he's going to be the X factor to steal the series, especially on its very terrible Vegas Golden Knights goaltending depth. Obviously, they have the seniority, they have the, in their minds what it takes to win, because they got Jack Eichel, who was on that Stanley Cup winning team, Noah Hannafin was on that team, Ivan Barbashev. They have the winners, they know what it takes, whereas Anaheim is all young. They've never played in a playoff series together. This is the first time ever, all these players together. So, they're going to have to figure it out. But when you play a team like the Edmonton Oilers, where their whole persona is goal scoring, and Vegas doesn't score very many goals compared to them, as much as the Oilers, if you can shut down McDavid, Draisaitl, and win that series, I think you'll have no problem shutting down the Vegas Golden Knights. I mean, I don't see it. I mean, like I said with the Colorado Avalanche, you're going to have to be putting shot after shot after shot on net. But I just think Owen Zellweger, Jackson McCone, Radko Gudas, they'll be able to shut down the blue line enough to stop players like Mitch Marner or Jack Eichel from controlling the ice like they're known for. So really quickly, just getting through this matchup, I have the Anaheim Ducks probably taking this in 6 games. I just realistically do not see the Vegas Golden Knights making it very far, considering they had a really bad slump at the end of the year. Granted, Anaheim did too, but like I said, the Pacific Division is just the poverty division this year. So it's really not hard to like say these teams are going to lose because they've been losing all year. So it's just been the very common trends. But going into our conference finals matchup, we have the Dallas Stars versus the Anaheim Ducks for the Western Conference. The winner of this will go to the Stanley Cup Final. And the big thing here, I've obviously said goaltending. Lucas Stahl and Jake Ottinger are obviously some of the best goaltenders in the league, both Olympic goaltenders. But, you gotta know what it takes to win. Especially when you make it this far in the playoffs. Most teams come this, you've obviously won 8 games, but you've probably played at least 12, if not 15 games up to this point. And when you've played that many postseason games, you have to be, physically healthy to get through it, because this is the hardest playoffs in the entire world. You could say football is, I heartily agree, because you play one game, you get a week of rest. These guys are going at it every other day on ice skates, moving 20 plus miles an hour. It's just the hardest hitting game. And when you're in the playoffs where it's known to be 100 times harder, you got to be physically strong. You got to be able to fight those demons, fight those injuries, be able to play through anything, no matter how hurt or what you're feeling. You got to be able to play. And the Dallas Stars have made it very far in the postseason multiple times in the last few years. I think this team is loaded. Mikko Rantanen has won a Stanley Cup. He knows what it takes to win. Jake Ottinger has won an Olympic gold. He knows what it takes to win. And this team has been coming up short every single year, and I think they're sick of it. I think, you've made it this far. You're sick of losing this far. You're going to do damn near anything to make sure you're going to get to the next rounds. And with the Anaheim Ducks being such a young team, I just don't think they have that seniority to lead them all the way. Yes, Radko Gudas is a Stanley Cup champion. He knows what it takes to win. But when your team's average age is just over 23, if not 23, I just don't think you're beating a stud-loaded roster in the Dallas Stars. And especially when their numbers are just overwhelming. I mean, they beat them in power play, penalty kill, and goals per game, and goals against. They beat them in every single category. And granted, they have scored a whopping 22 more points than the Anaheim Ducks, which is another 11 wins. So I just don't see the Anaheim Ducks advancing any further than this point, solely off of the fact that now they got to play some real teams. They don't have to play the poverty Pacific Division anymore. And, when they come to this real team, this is a Dallas team that we haven't seen in a very long time. They're extremely hot. Yes, they led up a very bad game where they lost to a minor league team, basically, with their entire starting roster playing. But I just, it's just, everyone has bad nights, Can't rip on them too hard. But the Dallas Stars, this is their year. This is their statement year. You've already beaten brain stopping here. You already beat the President's Trophy winning team, and you beat probably the second best team in the playoffs in the Minnesota Wild. There's no one stopping you. Not the Ducks. Ducks are definitely not stopping you. So I have the Dallas Stars advancing to the 2026 Stanley Cup Finals, representing the Western Conference. And what a team to do it. This is their year. I have a really good feeling the Dallas Stars are going to go all the way this year. And I think, this will definitely be an easier series for Dallas. It's just the big thing, and it's going to be for every team, granted. The one thing Dallas has always struggled with is staying healthy. If they stay healthy, they're going all the way. But if they suffer some bad injuries like they had last year, especially on the blue line, you cannot lose Miro Heiskanen. If you lose Miro Heiskanen, they could lose in the second round. You cannot have big injuries, and you got to keep the momentum riding. Ride on the good times. That's what we need. But yeah, so for your Western Conference, I have the Dallas Stars representing them. They'll probably take the series in 5 to 6 games, just because I don't think, they're beating... Anaheim's going to beat them in any category. And, when you're getting beat on every single fact of the ice, it's just extremely hard to win. Especially when you have to play the same team 5 times in a row. Yes, you'll adapt, but when they're just kicking you left and right, it's hard. It's really hard. And I just don't see it happening. So with that, we'll take our first break here before we dive into Eastern Conference. And yeah, Dallas Stars are representing your Western Conference. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my bracket predictions. Obviously, the last segment are in a little bit more long, so I'll try to run through this quickly. I know a lot more about the East, so I'll be a lot more confident by just saying who's going to win. So, going into the Eastern Conference of the Bracket Challenge here, we'll start off with one of the best teams since the Olympic break, the Buffalo Sabres. A team who has not been in the playoffs for 14 years, one of the longest playoff droughts in sports, finally makes it to the postseason. So I'm very excited to see what's going on there. I'd recommend tuning in just because, it's going to be hype in that arena. But just kind of diving into, the numbers with them, the goals for per game are 3.5. They have 3 goals against, and their power play is 19.5, with their penalty kill being really good, 82%. Now, one of the big things is obviously, they're having a historical season. This is the best season we've seen from Buffalo in actual years, probably 14 years, to be honest with you. And, it's being led by 3 main players, those 3 being Tage Thompson, one of the best forwards in the league, especially when it comes to goaltending, Olympic gold medalist for Team USA as well, Rasmus Dahlin, one of the best defensemen in the world, who I believe probably should win the Norris, which is the best defenseman of the year, basically the MVP for defensemen. And their goaltending, Alex Lyons played a historic season on his end, as he is not letting anything in the back of the net, something that we've really never seen from him, and especially from from Buffalo, because they're playing just extremely well. Now, if we dive into Boston, they're playing well too. They finished with 100 points in the standings as well. They had, let's look at that. We'll appreciate that for a minute. The Pacific, where it was 90-91, which got you the 2nd or 3rd place in the Pacific Division. 100 points only got you in the first wild card in the Stanley Cup playoffs in the East. Let that sink in for a minute. But anyways, the goals for per game for Boston is 3.3, which isn't bad. The goals against per game is 3.1, and their power play is significantly better at a whopping 24%. And their penalty kill is a little bit worse at 77, as their defense is more known for kind of roughing you up. They're not really known for making the big defensive plays, except for Charlie McAvoy, who's an amazing defenseman, also a Team USA Olympic gold medalist. So obviously, they have a lot of talent, especially in David Pastrnak, who peaked at 100 points this year. And, he's one of the best goal-scoring talents in the league, just behind Nathan McKinnon, Nikita Kucherov, or Connor McDavid. So, the big thing with this series is who's coming into the playoffs hot and who has the better goaltending and who scores more. All 3 of those are in favor of Buffalo. They have a better goaltender. I think Alex Lyons is going to outperform Jeremy Swayman. He has all year, so I don't think he's going to stop here. And even if Alex Lyons does perform, Devin Levi, one of the best upcoming prospects in the entire NHL for goaltending, he's showed that he's excellent when it comes to big games, especially when they have to take a huge shot load. And although Buffalo is very good, they do have that huge shot load against, so you need some big saves, but also a lot of them. So seeing that, I think the big thing for Boston is you just got to get a lot of shots on goal and have good quality chances. But I think, Rasmus Dahlin, Owen Power, they're just going to shut them down. And especially when you got a 2-way player like Alex Tuch being an offense and a defensive guy at the same time, they're going to have to figure out a way to contain him and Tage Thompson at the same time. And I just don't really see that from Boston. And this is really a fluke season for Boston too. They were going into a rebuild sort of year, kind of retooling actually is the proper term, which all that is they're going to kick a couple players out and bring a couple players in to build around the players that they already have. And it worked out extremely well as they got 100 points and made the playoffs. But, this Buffalo team, they're out for blood. This is their first time. There's going to be so much energy revolving around that team. And I just think, they're going to ride that hype. This is the dark horse of the year. And I just don't see them, Boston beating this dark horse. Although they're not a dark horse in the playoffs, I just don't see it. So first, I got Buffalo moving on to the second round on our Eastern Conference board. And diving into Series 2, we have another extremely close series. This is probably the second closest series in the entire NHL postseason this year, and that is Tampa Bay versus Montreal. Again, teams where their numbers are basically the exact same. They actually share the same amount of season points at 106, the same amount of goals for per game at 3.5, whereas goals against per game is a whopping 0.3 difference in favor of Tampa Bay at 2.8. And the power play is in favor of Montreal at a whopping 23.1, which is a lot contributed to the fact that Braden Point, one of the best forwards for Tampa Bay and a playmaker, has been out most of the year. But I think he'll make his return for the playoffs, so knowing that power play percentage will probably be higher than what it is now. And the penalty kill being in favor of the Tampa Bay Lightning at 82.6 compared to Montreal's 78.2. A lot of that is because of players like Darren Radish, Victor Hedman, just playing career numbers. I mean, some of the best defensemen in the league, they're going to be putting up big minutes for you guys, especially in the penalty kill. So kind of diving in, what is the X factor here? Montreal is extremely quick. They have a lot of young talent, especially in Ivan Demidov and Lane Hudson. Those two are some of the best up-and-coming rookies in the entire league, especially Lane Hudson, where he's an active defenseman like Cale Makar, but also very good at shutting you down at the same time. So you're going to have to find a way to contain Lane Hudson, which is extremely hard to contain an offensive defenseman because you don't know what they're going to do. And you can't really push up on them because you're going to break coverage in zone and then you're going to open up forward. So yeah, you really got to stop Lane Hudson somehow, and that's just extremely difficult. You also got to stop Cole Caulfield, or Goal Caulfield, as you call him if you're a Montreal Canadiens fan, as he had a whopping 50-goal year this year for the Montreal Canadiens. And you need goals. This guy's going to get you goals. So you got to contain Cole Caulfield. But Ivan Demidov, you can't let go of him either. So yeah, this team is just extremely talented, especially when they have a great two-way forward in Nick Suzuki as well, their captain. So what is Tampa Bay going to have to do? You're going to need some big minutes from your boy Nikita Kucherov, who's probably going to win the Hart for the most valuable player in the league. And, he scored, I'm pretty sure he either scores the goal or has an assist on over 40% of all total goals this year from Tampa Bay Lightning. So, you're going to have a big series from Nikita Kucherov. Braden Point, obviously, Victor Hedman needs to come back to really solidify this. If they don't come back, it's going to make it even harder. But if you have those two guys who've won Stanley Cups with Nikita Kucherov and the Lightning, they're going to help you kind of boost the morale and help you score more, give you more opportunities, and shut down plays, more importantly. But the big thing that's going to steal this year, make or break the series, is going to be goaltending. And Andre Vasilevsky, I'm not even going into it because he's one of the best goaltenders in the league, period. He's a Conn Smythe winner. He has multiple Venzas. He's just an excellent goaltender. So Montreal's going to have to figure him out. And Tampa Bay is going to have to figure out probably Jacob Dobbs, I would imagine. Or, it's probably Jacob Dobbs, I imagine. They could alternate between the two goaltenders for Montreal, but I imagine it's going to be Dobbs to start. But yeah, I'm looking at the series on my phone with the numbers and the little notes I have here. And Tampa Bay has been good for so long, but they're starting to look like the 2016 and beyond Pittsburgh Penguins, where they were just dominant winning. You can't stop them. But they're starting to fall off a little bit. They'll make the playoffs, but they won't win as much and as dominantly as they had in previous years. And with Montreal, they got slapped around last year in the playoffs, but that was the first time ever since coming back with this new team. I don't see it. I really don't see it happening this year. I think this is Montreal's year. They're coming in with a lot of firepower, a lot of talent. So I got the Montreal Canadiens upsetting the Tampa Bay Lightning and upsetting a lot of people's brackets, I imagine, in the first rounds. So yeah, Tampa Bay Lightning will be another first round exit for, I believe, the fourth year in a row. So that is no bueno if you're a Tampa Bay fan, but for Montreal, you don't really care too much. Now diving into the Eastern Conference division of the Metropolitan, we start off with the number 1 team, the Carolina Hurricanes, and the number 2 wild card in the Ottawa Senators. Again, the Ottawa Senators had 96 points to claim the wild card spot. The Oilers didn't even have 95. Let that sink in. But kind of just roughly diving into this series, Carolina is one of the best defensive shutdown teams in the league, as they have the least amount of shots on goal per game, and they just have one of the best penalty kills at 81%. So just being able, you're going to have a lot of offense and really talented offense to beat this Carolina blue line, especially their forwards. Their forwards getting involved in these defensive plays, and you just can't stop them. You can't get anything done. Seeing that, you got to have some elite talent, and I don't think Ottawa has that. They have some elite forwards in Tim Stützle, Dylan Cousins and Brady Kachuk, but I don't think they're elite enough, and I don't think they have enough depth to break this Carolina blue line and this Carolina just two-way forwards. And, although Carolina's goaltending is just absolutely atrocious, I mean, they are historically bad, I really don't see them having to worry about that as their defense is good enough to prevent Ottawa from scoring 4 to 5 goals a game. So I think solely off of the fact that Ottawa's numbers are not great, they're a wildcard 2 team that barely snuck in. I don't see them beating the Carolina Hurricanes, especially when Carolina's been as dominant for as long as they have. So just really briefly going through the series, I'm just going to say Carolina Hurricanes are going to take it. I just don't think Ottawa has it. And especially when their goaltending's been inconsistent too. Although both goaltenders for both teams suck. I just think, Carolina's defense is going to make up for that, whereas I don't think Ottawa's will. And when you got Seth Jarvis, Sebastian Aho, and Andrei Svechnikov running up your alley, it's not going to cut it. Not going to cut it. So I got the Carolina Hurricanes moving on to the second rounds for the Eastern Conference. I got Ottawa losing again in the first round. But they're very close. I think this is just a really bad matchup if you're Ottawa. Really good for your Carolina fans, especially the ones that live down here where I'm at. But I just realistically don't see it. At least this year. Maybe next year, you never know. But the last series in the first round for the Eastern Conference is your Pittsburgh Penguins versus the Philadelphia Flyers. This is going to be a nasty series. These two teams hate each other. They're in-state rivals. You're not going to want to come across any of these teams, especially when you got to go through the Philadelphia Flyers for the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Pittsburgh Penguins beat Philly in literally every category. They have home ice advantage, and they've had Philadelphia's number all year. They've only lost 2 games to them, and that was in a shootout. There's no shootouts in the postseason. It's all overtime. It's all 5-on-5. And Pittsburgh has some of the best 5-on-5 talent in goal scoring in the entire league. So I just think, Philadelphia's have to figure out a way to shut him down, starting with Dan Vladar, starting goaltender, but I just don't think he's good enough to steal a series. Unless Porter Martone, Matvei Michkov, and Owen Tippett, which are big young studs coming up from Philadelphia, have some big games and big moments, scoring goals and getting on assists, I just don't see them beating Pittsburgh. I'm not even trying to be biased. I really just don't see them beating Pittsburgh. I don't think a lot of people seeing it, especially when you got Sidney Crosby and Erik Karlsson playing as good as they have. Yegor Chinakhov is playing excellent. And, you have Stuart Skinner, too, which was the goaltender that came from Edmonton in the Jari trade. He's been to back-to-back Stanley Cup finals. Although he's never won a Stanley Cup, he knows what it takes to get at least 12 wins in the postseason. So he's going to find a way to get at least 4, especially out of a team like Philadelphia. So I just got Pittsburgh moving on. Just really briefly running through that because, Philly sucks. We don't like Philly here. But yeah, I just don't see Philadelphia upsetting Pittsburgh unless big injuries occur. But Pittsburgh's getting one of the best two-way forwards in Blake Lizotte coming back here very soon. So I just really don't see, Philly beating them on any front. So that being mentioned, we'll move on to the second round here real briefly with Buffalo and Montreal. Buffalo-Montreal, this is going to be another extremely close series. And the big thing with Buffalo-Montreal is they have the same amount of goals for per game, about the same amount of goals against per game. The power play is significantly favored for Montreal because of that active defenseman like Lane Hudson. Although Rasmus Dahlin has that capability, Lane Hudson's just another beating. And the penalty kill is significantly favored for Buffalo too, so this kind of offset a little bit. But the big thing with Montreal, the big thing for Buffalo Sabres is it's got to be goaltending. The big thing that's going to separate the series is goaltending. And I think the goaltending from Alex Line and the Buffalo Sabres has been elite all year. I don't see them stopping anytime soon, even against this powerhouse in the Montreal Canadiens, unless Ivan Demidov and Cole Caulfield just score like every single shift. I really don't see them beating one of the hottest teams in the NHL. This team is one of the best we've seen in years. I've already said that multiple times for Buffalo, but they're just so hot going into the postseason. I just don't see them cooling down, even in I guess it's summer now, but in the cool temperatures of Canada and Montreal. So unless, big moments from Caulfield and the big four for Montreal happen, they're not winning. And the big thing for Buffalo is you just got to keep shots off your goaltender. I don't think they have a problem scoring goals. I don't think, their penalty kill's bad, but you got to get some shots off your goaltender. If you let up 30, 40 shots a game, that hurts them, especially when you go on for 5+ games probably in a series. You really got to focus on just kind of getting shots off your goaltender. And when you're playing hard in the playoffs, got to keep that consistency. So I think, if Buffalo just plays harder than they have this all year, I think, they keep the shots off the goaltender. They keep them a little rested to make them last full series and buy back a couple goals by having less shots. So without that being said, I'm going to say Buffalo upsets Montreal, or it doesn't upset, they're seeded higher, but, a lot of people would see this as an upset. I have Montreal falling to the Buffalo Sabres in the second round of the postseason. And, I forgot to mention, actually kind of looking at the board now, but for the first rounds, for Buffalo versus Boston, that will probably be a 5-game series. I really don't see it going any further than 5 games. For Tampa Bay, Montreal, that will probably be a 7-game series. I think that will be a very close series. I think it will be at least 7. Carolina, Ottawa will be probably at least 6. I think Ottawa will steal a few games, especially in a very energetic arena in the Canadian Tire Center in Ottawa. And Philly versus Pittsburgh, I think, Pittsburgh, depending on how hot they come out, they've rested a lot of players this last week, so they're going to have a game or two to recoup. I think, they could probably beat Philadelphia in about 6 games, maybe 5, but like I said, all their starters have had like a week off, so kind of getting back into game time mode, especially in the postseason, is going to take a little longer than usual, so I'm going to say 6 games for them. Without further ado, we will dive into the Carolina vs. Pittsburgh round 2 series, and the big thing here is, the matchups between these two teams have been close all year. They've been about 1-goal games, except for one where Carolina ran away with it, where they scored 5, where they won 5-1. They've been extremely close, but the big thing with Carolina and Pittsburgh is Pittsburgh will make one mistake and Carolina will capitalize on it every single time. It could be the slightest mistake and Carolina will always find a way to put it in the back of our net. And, their goaltending sucks. We've scored on them a lot this year, but the truth is, Pittsburgh's made a lot of mistakes all year. They've played good, and Carolina's just that team. They are going to find a way to win, especially with that defense. I think they're only going to get better further along in the postseason. So with that defense being mentioned, I think, that's going to be X factor for Carolina. And with Pittsburgh, they're a bit old. Sidney Crosby's 38, Malkin's 39, Letang's 38, Carlson's in his 30s. I mean, they have some young talent in Yegor Chinnikov, Tommy Novak, Ben Kindle, and we'll see if Avery Haynes actually ends up playing. I doubt he will. But I just, I think they're going to be too slow, and you got to be fast. You got to be fast against Carolina because you got to find a way to break up their defense. And if you're going in slow, that just gives them too much time to set and too much time to make them play the hockey they want you to play. And, it'll be close, I imagine. I think Pittsburgh will steal a couple games, but I don't think it's going to be a 7-game series close, although I really hope it is, but being realistic, no bias, I think Carolina will probably upset Pittsburgh in that second round. I just really don't see Pittsburgh kind of overcoming that. They don't have enough depth on their roster really to be a Carolina powerhouse like that. So, and Carolina's had her number all year. They've had her number for years as of recent. So I really don't see them like slowing down anytime soon. Whereas Pittsburgh, they're getting old, and if they can't stay healthy, they're definitely not gonna win. And when you're old, it's hard to stay healthy. So without further ado, we got our Eastern Conference final here in the East. We have the Buffalo Sabres representing the Atlantic, and then we have the Carolina Hurricanes representing the Metropolitan. The big thing between these two teams, again, they're extremely close. They're both extremely talented rosters. But the big thing here, what I think is going to be power play, which is extremely favored for Carolina at 25% to Buffalo's 20%. It's going to be goaltending. And although the numbers suggest Carolina's better, that's solely because of their defense. And their goaltender is terrible. Frederik Andersen's bad. Unless Pyotr Kochetkov comes back and plays, I realistically don't see them having great goaltending. I mean, Brandon Boosie's been playing extremely well, but you can't bring 3 goaltenders. I mean, you can, but you can't at the same time. So Buffalo's big thing is their defense and their goaltending. I mean their offense and their goaltending. I think Tage Thompson, he's huge. He's hard to stop. Rasmus Dahlin's an active defenseman, which Carolina struggled against all year. They've struggled against teams with active defensemen because it's a 5th forward, and that's extremely hard to account for. Or I'm sorry, 4th forward, which is extremely hard to counter, especially when you have 2 defensemen and maybe 1 two-way player, which means probably around 3 defensemen. If you have 4 forwards, I mean, that's extremely hard to stop. So, I think Buffalo, again, is going to turn some heads. They're going to pull some upsets here. They're riding that hype. They're riding the energy. They're just too hot right now. Tage Thompson's too hot. Rasmus Dahlin's too hot. They're not cooling down in Carolina. And, I mean, unless Carolina can find some goaltending, which I really think they won't, I don't see them really making it very far in the postseason. I mean, I could even put Pittsburgh here. I still think Buffalo would beat them. But Pittsburgh, they have goaltending. They just don't really have as strong as a defense as Carolina does. And based off the first 2 rounds, defense will get you through, but you need offense. And I just don't think their offense is going to outscore Buffalo. Because, Andre Svechnikov's been way too spotty in the playoffs. Sebastian Aho is great, but he doesn't score goals. And Seth Jarvis, he's a great player all around, but that's it. You got to find some depth. Shane Gostisbehere will be your active defenseman, but other than that, you don't really have much to work with. So kind of diving into that fact that Carolina doesn't have really too much offense, and when they're going to run into a team that plays a very similar style of hockey to them, I just don't really think they're going to win solely based off of goaltending. And I think goaltending, Alex Lyon's been playing extremely well. I think he's going to find a way to steal the series. Like I said, the big thing when you have 2 close matchups, what's going to steal the series is goaltending. It's going to be goaltending this one. I have Alex Lyon stealing it for Buffalo here. So I got Buffalo Sabres representing the East in the Stanley Cup Finals here against the Dallas Stars of the West. So, without taking a break here, we'll just kind of you know what? Now we'll take a break here before we get to the Stanley Cup Finals. This will be our second little break, and we'll be right back with you with my Stanley Cup winner for 2026 prediction. Ladies and gentlemen, or ladies and gentlemen, I should say, we are back. We're not taking any more breaks. We're going right into the Stanley Cup Finals here. I have the Dallas Stars representing the West and the Buffalo Sabres representing the East. So, kind of just diving in a little bit into each team. You've heard the same team 3 times already. But, obviously the goaltending, Jake Ottinger for Dallas Stars is one of the best in the league. The goal-scoring depth from Jason Robertson, Mikko Rantanen, Wyatt Johnson, Tyler Seguin, and all these other players for the Dallas Stars are just elite, some of the best in the league, all of them having over at least a point per game. So you're going to have to figure out a way to stop these guys from contributing to their team. Obviously, they have a big blue line in an Esa Lindell and a Miro Heiskanen for Dallas. So Buffalo's going to have real trouble getting through these defensemen that are really defensive. They're not active like Rasmus Dahlin, but they're extremely defensive and they're extremely good at their job. So they're going to have real trouble finding a way through that. Kind of just looking at the numbers too, the Dallas Stars have been in the last 3 Western Conference Finals, losing all 3, but they've been in the running every single time. So now that they've kind of made it past this Western Conference hump, I think, that's going to really light a spark. It's going to rejuvenate a team, and you got to be rejuvenated. Up to this point, you've probably played 20-ish games in the postseason, and when these games are 10 times, if not 100 times harder than a regular season game, those 20 games feel like 100 regular season games. People are beat up, they're playing with injuries, illness, they're going through it physically and mentally. But I think when you get over that hump of the last 3 years, and you got the goaltending, you got the goal scoring, you got the defense, assuming you're healthy, that is a huge spark and a huge motivation booster for the Dallas Stars in this moment. And obviously, their big players are going to have to play big. You got to get some goals from Wyatt Johnson and Jason Robertson if you want to be in. You got to get some plays from Mikko Rantanen. And I think those are three guys. If I had them on my team, the Pittsburgh Penguins, we would win Stanley Cups every year. These are players you want on your team, no matter how good you are. Even if you have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl on your team, you want Jason Robertson or a Wyatt Johnson too, because these guys are elites. They are some of the best players in the league. They make their Olympic rosters for a reason. They are the best at what they do. So, kind of knowing that, big things for Buffalo, they're going to have to figure out three things. A, how are you going to shut down the powerhouse of an offense of Dallas? B, being you're going to have to figure out a way to get through Jake Ottinger, one of the best goaltenders in the league, one of the most underrated and slept on in my opinion. 3, you're going to have to figure out a way to make them play your way. And all that really means is you can't let Dallas control the game. You have to start by winning faceoffs, having big penalty kills, and having big moments. And this Dallas team, with their being rejuvenated in this Stanley Cup final, you're going to have to figure their way out to stop that. You're going to have to find a way to suck all their motivation away and shut them down. You can't be playing their way. You have to figure out how to get them to play your way. That's a big thing. If you're Dallas to beat Buffalo, just keep doing what you're doing. But for Buffalo, they obviously haven't been in the Stanley Cup final in literal years. The last Stanley Cup final they were in was controversial. Dominic Hasek foot in the crease. It's a long story we won't get into, but they lost. They haven't been this far in the postseason, nevertheless a postseason in the last 14 years. So this is going to be a very fresh, very newborn, childish kind of feeling. They're not going to know what to do or what's going on. Whereas this Dallas team, yes, they've never been in the finals, but they've been in the conference finals, which is basically going to be close enough because these two teams don't have any Stanley Cup experience in the last 4 or 5 years. Dallas, yes, they made it to the 2020 Stanley Cup, but that was in a fluke COVID-19 bubble year. So they don't really have a lot of real playoff atmosphere, real NHL kind of playoff experience. So I would say, the next best thing, both teams don't have Stanley Cup experience. It's going to be the next one, which is conference finals. Dallas has been in the last 3. They've lost, but they know what they need to do to be better every single year. And I just think this is going to be the year where they do it. But, obviously Buffalo is going to have a real shot this year with being one of the best teams in the NHL past the Olympic break. I don't know how many times I've said that, but it's true. They have one of the highest goals per game, especially when you got Tage Thompson, one of the best goal scorers in the league. You also have Rasmus Dahlin, the active defenseman. You got players in Zach Benson, who's a really young, talented forward. You also have Alex Tuch. I think it's Josh Doan, not Shane Doan. Josh Doan, who's a really young, really good player. A lot of other players, I just have to look at the roster because I can't think of them off the top of my head. It's the one team I haven't really followed as much as these other ones. But the big thing is they're finding a way to get goaltending and scoring for more than just one guy. And the playoffs is a full 23-man roster. You have to have all 23 men on the same page or you're not going to win. And, with the 12 forwards so far with Buffalo, they've been on it all year. They're getting goals and points from all 12 forwards, not just 6, kind of like the Dallas Stars team. So kind of seeing that, if they find a way to keep these forwards in, and I mean like in the game, they're scoring goals, they're scoring points, they're getting on the sheet no matter what it may be, as long as it's not a penalty, this is going to be a really hard team to stop, especially Dallas. Yes, they have a really good defense, but you can't have Miro Heiskanen and Esa Lindell play 30-plus minutes a night. You can have them play 25-plus, but not 30. And, when you have all 12 forwards going in, all scoring points, all scoring goals, picking the moments when you have your best 2 players out is extremely difficult. And you have to really bank on your bottom 4. Dallas' bottom 4 is good, but it's not great. So the big thing if Buffalo wants to upset Dallas is they got to have a deep 12 players. And, their defense, it's really good too. And Bowen Byram, Rasmus Dahlin, Nolan Power. Also additions to the Luke Schenn and Logan Stastny, who are just really there to beat you up. They're gonna be forces to mess with. But goal scoring talents, I'm looking at the roster right here. Josh Norris, Jack Quinn, Jason Zucker, Josh Doan, Zach Benson, Sam Carrick's having a great year. Kind of surprising. Ryan McLeod, these guys, if you can get goals, whether it be 1 or 2 in the entire series, as long as they're scoring, that's 1 more goal than expected. That's what you need to be a powerhouse like Dallas. But you also, to score, you have to put shots on net. Buffalo is very inconsistent on how many shots to get on net. You're going to need at least 25 to 30 plus shots on goal if you want to beat this Dallas team, and especially beat Jake Ottinger. So, kind of just looking at this, it's extremely close. This will be a very fun final to watch. I think it will probably end up going to 6 games. As for the winner, I'll say here in a second, but big things to remember, just big 3. If you're Buffalo, you need elite goaltending from Alex Lyon. You need all 12 forwards scoring, and you need consistency. You need consistency throughout all these games. You cannot have 1 good period. You have to have a good 3+ periods. These games are going to go overtime. I have a really good feeling about it. If you're Dallas, keep the train rolling. You got to keep scoring. I mean, they have no problem scoring, but you got to score. Capitalize on the power play. Buffalo's penalty kill is weak. Your power play is extremely strong. Every power play, you got to capitalize on it. And also, just you got to have strong defense. I'm not as worried about Jake Ottinger having big goaltending as I am worried about the defense being consistent, especially against a really deep Buffalo roster. So you have to have extremely strong defensive side of the game. So with that, I think it'll go to 6 games. But before I reveal our winner, I'm going to invite our editor, Ryan, to join us here to see what his bracket's looking like. And then we'll reveal both of our winners here for our 2026 Stanley Cup final bracket.
All right, here we go. So I'll let you hold that.
I got you.
So, a lot of this is going off of stats because I have no idea about hockey. So, we have Avalanche Kings. I have Avalanche going up against there. I got them winning. We have Stars and Wilds. I have Dallas winning that one. Golden Knights and Mammoth. I have Vegas winning that one. Oilers and Ducks. I have Oilers winning that one against Ethan's bracket. But
hey, you can't betting against Connor McDavid. Is never good. But
yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see how it turns out. And then I have. Let's see. Yeah, I have Vegas against Oilers, and then I have Oilers winning that one again. And then I'm looking at my stats as well. I have the Avalanches and Dallas Stars going up, and then I have Stars making it all the way to the final. That's for the Western side. Other side, I'm kind of iffy about because going up against Ethan's bracket.
It's so close. Man.
Yeah. Going up against Ethan's bracket, I'm kind of scared. But we have the Sabres and the Bruins. I have Sabres winning that one. Lightning and Canadians. I have Canadians winning that one.
That's going to be an interesting series. That can go either way.
Yeah, a lot of these are so close. That's why it's hard to decide. And then we have Hurricanes and Senators. I gotta go Carolina. Hometown. Yeah, gotta go Carolina.
The hometown
exactly.
team.
Gotta represent. Penguins and Flyers. Gotta go Pittsburgh. Just because he's here. Why not? Right? They're pretty close.
Filthy Philly.
Yeah. No one likes Philly. I gotta go Penguins.
Philly cheesesteaks are good. That's it.
They are good. But then you're gonna be mad because on the second part of that, I have Penguins and Carolinas. Yeah. I have Carolina going.
I agree. I had the same thing.
You had the same thing, so it's not that bad. But
I'm realistic. I'm not a die-hard delusional fan. So.
Yeah, I got you. And then we have Buffalo Sabres and the Montreal Canadiens. I have Montreal taking the lead on that one.
I had Buffalo.
You had Buffalo, so we'll see how that turns out.
Another close one.
Yeah, so then we have the finale with that and Montreal against Carolina Hurricanes. Love Carolina, but stats-wise and from what he was telling me, I got to go Montreal.
Yeah, for you Carolina fans out there, you guys haven't won a conference final game since 2006. I'm pretty sure you're 0-12 or 0-16, so...
Yeah, and then
not looking good.
Finally, for the finale, I have Dallas Stars against Montreal, and I picked Montreal to win the finale. So
Canadians bring it home after 20+ years.
Yes, that was purely based off of stats, like I said, I have no idea about hockey. None of that means anything to me except for Carolina. I wish I could have had it going all the way.
I feel that.
You know, going off of your bracket, let's compare.
It's a little.
So it's pretty consistent on the west side. East side is.
So like this is your stats
of,
bracket, and then this is like your kind of like your insider kind of.
Yeah, this would be stats and feels. So we'll see who comes out on top. I feel like you got a pretty strong bracket. I on the other hand completely guessed. So we'll see.
For my bracket challenge, I think the 2026 Stanley Cup Final winner will be the team. They're finally going to get over the hump. They're going to go all the way, get revenge for 2020. Well, not really revenge, but they're going to win it for the first time in a very long time. I got the Dallas Stars taking it home to the city of Dallas in Texas in 2026, upsetting the Buffalo Sabres, bringing home one of the first Western Conference Stanley Cups in a while. So, good job, Western Conference. But yeah,
all right,
that is our official bracket challenge for 2026. The brackets need to be submitted by at least 3 p.m. to get your best chance of winning at least $1 million and a free trip for the NHL. So make sure you get some free money here. And I wish you the best of luck, but also just enjoy it. Enjoy it. The NHL postseason is one of the best in the world. In any postseason, it's up there with the World Cup, with fun being to watch, no matter if you're a fan of the sport or not. Just enjoy it, and most importantly, fill the brackets out, man.
I had a lot of fun filling mine out. I had no idea what I was doing, but it was still a lot of fun. I had some great help too, giving me guidelines, pointers, player stats, all of that. So it was a lot of fun.
We had fun. Hopefully, we'll see you here with our secondary host, Ethan, with a World Cup feature here pretty soon.
Yes,
but we promise we will have more episodes out more consistently. We will not take 4-month breaks anymore.
No, we are locked in right now.
We're locked.
We're ready. Got the setup going. Yeah, we're ready.
But yeah, we will see you guys next time.
All right.
Go Pittsburgh, Penguins. Come on now.
Go Carolina. Go Carolina.